Find an OT practitioner to sing the anthem like that. Okay, so she's referring to they had an OT that is part, I believe she's Army, and she's saying the national anthem at the beginning of the session for this. And so it was pretty impressive, and that's what she's referring to. My life really needed to be what mattered to me. So when I heard that I was coming here, Sarah was always like, this is the place for the kids. So start with what I call practitioners like this. Everyone has a difference, like the ones where the drivers go from the system. Same here. Told if I shot you when I met you, I'd be out of jail by now. I tell you, two love country kids from All by yourself. There's no need to join up stupid. So we get these things caught in our filter and we can't see beyond it. And the best way to clean your filter is through gratitude. I'm not talking about counting your blessings that you do it now. Okay. So share sound. The same. I have done this so many times at school. Where's the flippin' share sound?
It's usually like in the bottom left corner.
Bottom left. Where the microphone is, speaker, same as system. Switch,
Like
leave, no.
Like when you go to share your screen.
Oh, okay, hold on. That's right. Ah, basic. Share sound. Okay, sorry guys.
Shown to you and the gifts that you instill in others, you become what that brilliant poet Prince said. This is what it sounds like when doves cry. And not being satisfied will always keep you in want. So their need to tell you thank you is a gift to you for those moments when you can't get through it. I had an experience once. I was in an airport, and prior to the pandemic, I lived in an airport. There was a little girl running around and running in circles. She was crashing into things and crashing into people, and I looked at her and I recognized, and people were like, somebody needs to get that kid. She was with her father, and her father was like, somebody needs to get that kid. And I'm a mom. I have 5 adopted children. They're all born fetal alcohol and crack addicted. Yup. They've seen somebody in this room or online at least once. So I saw this kid, I recognized it. My youngest son is autistic. We found out he's just different. He didn't speak until he was 6. It was right after we saw The Lion King. Yeah, now he talks like James Earl Jones. I'm not even kidding you. He's like, cereal, mother. My son chases a ceiling fan and I let him because that way I know where he is. One day he's chasing a ceiling fan, he stopped and says, mother, do you think at this time, this place, this moment, there's another planet where people are doing what we're doing at this time, this place, this moment? I said, oh my God, he's contemplating a parallel universe and chasing a ceiling fan. Oh, he gonna be an OT practitioner. I see this girl running in circles. I recognize it. I was like, little girl. She was like, what, lady? I said, Frozen or Monsters University. She was like, Monsters University. She came running over, crashed her little body next to mine. I said, all right, we're going to watch it. I pull up my phone. I pull it up. We start watching it. And she's perfectly still. And everybody's like, oh, my God, thank you. And the father's like, oh, my God, thank you. I'm like, oh, my God, I didn't do it for you. We're watching this. And as with anything, you know, when you're doing the right thing, time flies by. They call for boarding and I get up and I'm hurt more than normal and I'm stiffer stiffer than I normally am, because prior to the pandemic, what I didn't say out loud to any audience anywhere is that I live with MS. I didn't want anybody to know that I was less than, that I thought I was. I didn't want anybody to know what I was going through. I didn't want anybody to think I wouldn't show up. I didn't want anybody to feel that way. So I was like, oh, little girl, I got a board. It's early boarding. I got a board. She's like, thank you so much, lady. I was like, you're welcome, kid. I get to the gate agent. The gate agent looks at me and says, there's nothing wrong with you. This is early boarding. There's nothing wrong with you. That is the first time that has ever happened. Only you all would understand that. Because too many times you have to show up when something's going on with you, and you got to help the people who claim that everything is about them. But you've got to show up also. And I thought about people who show up when they're looking just fine. And I remembered that I'm a bajillion mile flyer, and I scanned my own boarding pass and limped on down the jet bridge. I plopped in my seat. The flight attendant came over and was like, hi. She was talking all loud, and I was like, oh, because I got a cane, I understand. Again, you're the only people to understand that. She's like, you're in the wrong seat. I was like, am I? Because I sometimes sit down in the wrong seat. I was like, what? And she said, coach is back there. Right. My neck, I was warming it up. And the moment I was about to let loose, because I was just tired and I was weary and I was sick of it, that little girl came running on the plane. Lady! Lady! I was like, I'm over here, kid. What is it? Keep your voice down. Inside voice. Inside voice. She ran over and she handed me this. And I couldn't tell what it was. You're going to have to zoom way in. It is the glove to her doll. She said, now you have one and I have one. We sisters. And she ran off. I've never seen her again. But that little glove stays on the inside of my Kindle. When I sit down to read, I don't even have to see it. I feel that little lump, and in that moment, I'm reminded that no matter what I'm going through, I still possess the ability to change somebody else's life. We are wired for narrative. If I share a story, your mind automatically goes to the story that you need to connect to. Story bonds us, story completes us, story brings us together. And you are the keepers of so many amazing stories. I didn't really understand the power of narrative and the power of story and how everything we're going through is a story until I suffered from a head injury. I used to have very, very long dreadlocks. In fact, if you see me do this, it's a phantom dreadlock. It was debilitating, as you already know. I had a siren going off in my left ear. All sound was at the exact same level. I could not read. I went from reading 6 books a week to not being able to read at all. Everything was confusing. Everything was frustrating. Everything made me angry and anxious, and I could not get it together. After the injury, I actually went to the hospital, and they said, well, they asked me some questions, and then they, said, looks like you're having a heart attack. And they kept me for 3 days around my heart and never did a brain scan. And 2 months later, when all those symptoms came crashing in, I had forgotten that I'd fallen and hit my head. I didn't know what was going on at that point. Then I went to a specialist, and they figured it out. They said, this really sounds like post-concussion disorder. Did you hit your head? And I was like, I did! So he's like, oh, okay. He's got a little excited, was shifting from foot to foot. I was like, what are you so excited about? He's like, this is like textbook. I'm like, not in my head, it ain't. In fact, I can't read a textbook. He said, well, your brain, the computer is designed just like your brain. And all of your stories are confused. And you know, everything's defragmented. Everything, it's all confused. It's everywhere. You've got a script for walking, one for talking, one for walking and talking. I was like, okay, get to me. He said, all of that is confused and it's going to heal, but it has to reboot. You're going to have to reboot. Usually takes, you know, months sometimes. For some people, a year. It's going to take you a little bit longer. The damage is pretty bad. So I looked at him like this. Then I did this. Then I started doing this. He said, are you okay? I said, uh-huh. He said, what are you doing? I said, deleting old files. Look, there's you. I was so angry. I was like, well, why didn't they? OT practitioner, they send me to her down the hall. Real quick, get her in there. And I'm sitting there just crying. My brain is broken. My brain is broken. And she said the most important thing to me that I've ever heard in my life. She said, baby, move to your heart. I'm going to tell you now, I don't think she knew the significance of it. I think she was just trying to tell me to calm down without using those words. You know, I got some kind of device that helped my hearing kind of integrate, and I realized how loud I had been, and it was like, ooh, I was loud. She's like, uh-huh. I don't think she knew. And from that moment on, I started looking for that, because I'm a sociologist. That's what we do. And somebody gave me the movie I Am by Tom Shadyac. He had suffered a concussion.
Okay, so we'll pause because if we watch the whole thing, that will be the whole meeting. But I just wanted to give you guys an idea of what a keynote speaker is like. And the story, I mean, she goes on and really weaves how OT has impacted her life. And you just come away so inspired. I mean, she literally did make that dress, and she goes on to how she taught herself how to sew. And it's just, her story is phenomenal. And then the other part of conference that it's not every year, but most years is a Eleanor Clark Slagle lecture, which I didn't always go to those either, because as a clinician, I thought, I got other things to do. I'm going to go have a margarita or whatever. But then I did go to some of them. And again, they are, it's a clinician, a master clinician that has made an impact to the profession in some way. And the one that I went to since I've been in my position now was Glenn Gillen, and just his Choose Wisely, I think it was, and I can't really remember now, but it really made an impact. And if you know, all of them are out there. If you're an AOTA member, they're all out there to watch again or for the first time. So just really neat connections to the profession to keep you engaged.
But I would add, like, this keynote speaker in particular, well, I mean, I haven't been to as many, but this one for sure, like, there is probably not a dry eye in the whole, like, several thousand people there. But I think the big takeaway was, you know, like, the empowerment to be proud of what we do as OT practitioners and what our profession, you know, how meaningful it really is to people. And I think it left an awareness of, we need to do better of making sure that people understand what we do, and just being recognized for the broad diversity of what our profession can actually do for people. So I think that was super exciting. What's that?
Her statement of wearing it on the outside is really the whole meat and potatoes of what she's talking about. Is we do as OTs, we kind of keep it on the inside what we do, and we need to start wearing it on the outside and get people, like Dr. Kornblau was saying, is we need to be the first ones to do something and not keep following daggone PT. We can be the pioneers in something and lead the way ahead of the other rehabilitative services.
So I think with that, part of the like academic pre-conference really talked about some big things that AOTA have been doing legislation wise, which is where I'm not claiming to be any expert on this, but what is it? OT PAC.
Barbara probably can speak to that part, the political action side of things.
Yeah. Oh, you're muted. I can't hear you.
I can't either.
No wonder.
There
My
we go.
microphone was muted. My headset was muted. Sorry about that. So the PAC, the Political Action Committee, is technically not a part of AOTA because nonprofits cannot have PACs, but so it's technically a separate entity. And what it does is it collects money to donate for specific causes to elected officials. So a lot of what they've done in the past has been like getting Medicare reimbursement fixed so that we can have, it used to be that you had to have PT in order to bill for OT. And they've since fixed that after 45 years I've been in OT. It took a long time. Shouldn't have taken that long. But anyway, so there are a lot of things like that that they try and fix, but AOTA can't donate money. They can't lobby, but the PAC can. The Political Action Committee can lobby and advocate for things, which is what they try to do. And, you know, it makes sense. One of the things that bothers me about AOTA's advocacy is it's all for getting paid. They don't care about anything else but getting paid and getting reimbursed. And, you know, there are other things that they could care about, like advocacy for other things. I'm doing a thing on Thursday night for the RDSIS, the Rehabilitation and Disability Special Interest Section, on policy and advocacy. And we're going to be talking about how to advocate for compression garments. Why aren't compression garments paid for by Medicaid and mandatory health insurance? And so I looked online, and there's a bill that's got like hundreds of sponsors in the House and in the Senate, but the bill has never gotten what we call a score. What's a score? A score is when the Congressional Budget Office evaluates a bill and talks about how much it's going to cost and where the money is going to come from. So the fact that it's got, you know, 300, I'm making up a number, but it's really high, you know, 300 sponsors, but there's no score, means it doesn't mean anything, because they're not talking about where the money is going to come from. So that's something I'm going to talk about on Thursday, because if OTs really put their mind to it, we could get that passed. It's just a matter of how do we do that. But AOTA is not going to do it because AOTA only cares about reimbursement and stuff. But when you think about it, we should care about that, because what's the purpose of rehabilitating people and getting them compression garments if they can't afford them? You know, where do we end our advocacy? Do we end it when we say, okay, she's got more range of motion, I can prove that what I did was good for her? Or do we end it at, I helped change her life, I made it so that she can function, so that she has compression garments, now she can cook for her family, she can do what she used to do before she had the surgery. So a lot of it is a question of, you know, where do we see our profession? Where does our advocacy start? Where does our advocacy end?
Lay down.
So I'm hopeful that, you know, if you're not doing anything Thursday, and I'm not promoting myself, I'm promoting, because it's not just me, it's
Yes.
three other, you know, a couple of other people. The RDSIS thing is Thursday.
Awesome. The other big thing that got passed is the home health part of OTs being able to open a home health case, which has been there forever. And we kind of shot our own selves in the foot by saying, well, I don't really want to, so I'll just let it hang out there because it's so much work.
That's what I was referring to about 45 years. Because
the PT.
I mean, Yeah.
Yeah.
I've been doing home health literally on and off for 45 years.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, so that was one of the big things that they talked about that actually getting passed, as well as, which if there's more you want to add about the home health.
Well, it's embarrassing to me that it took 45 years.
Yeah.
It's almost like it's not something to be proud of.
No.
Because it shouldn't have, I mean, literally, I've been doing home health. I mean, I haven't done it for the last like maybe 7 years, but I've been doing home health for all that time. Since I graduated, I was doing home health. And the idea that, like, why can't we get this done? What's the big deal? What's,
well, home health is one of the most OT practice areas there is. So for us to not be able to go in on our own has been crazy.
Well, and the idea that we couldn't open a case.
Right.
I mean, that just was, I never understood that. And I couldn't figure out, why can't AOTA get that done? And, it's also, why aren't compression garments paid for?
Yeah.
And one of the problems to me, and, forgive me for being the lawyer in the room, we need to teach OTs about policy so that it makes sense, because we're always going to face things where the insurance company says, we're not going to pay for that. So how do we advocate for that and say, you have to pay for that? You're an insurance company. You're supposed to rehabilitate people. They got an insurance policy that says you'll rehabilitate them. It's just not acceptable to me to be able to say, well, we'll do A, B, but not C. So you're never going to be able to go back to work because we're not going to give you compression garments. It just doesn't make sense. And it bothers me tremendously when I see that all AOTA cares about is us getting paid for certain things.
Right.
And not for everything. And, there are 3 stories I tell. I'll only tell one of them now. So we just did a new book chapter and it's going to be in it. I had a client, a legal client. Her name was Debbie, and she was a C5-6 quad. And she worked at Jackson Memorial Hospital in Miami, which was at the time, they've since split. It was the University of Miami's Medical School Hospital. And she hired me as her lawyer because they wouldn't promote her. She was an accountant and she worked, she wanted to be promoted. She kept coming up for promotion. They kept passing her over. So she calls me up one day and she says, put on your OT hat. I said, it's always on. And she said, I've had vaginal bleeding for 4 months and I can't get a doctor to do a pap smear on me. I said, well, let me make some calls and I will find you a doctor. I will transfer you to the table. I'll hold your legs up. Whatever I need to do, I will do that for you. So I did. And she got a call 2 days later. She had stage 4 cervical cancer and she died 6 weeks later. Now, why is that? Why does that happen? Why don't we have accessible medical equipment? Because it's not mandatory in the law. Why is an occupational therapist advocating for accessible medical equipment being mandatory? I got it in ACA, but I couldn't get it in ACA as mandatory. So why can't we take that on? Because people are dying.
Yeah. Well, it always blew my mind. My mom had multiple sclerosis also, like this keynote speaker. And when she was total care, wheelchair with primary mode of transportation, mobility, going to the neurologist, there was nothing accessible. He would have to examine her in the wheelchair. The table was there, but she couldn't get on it. They didn't have a Hoyer or anything to get her on that. So he really didn't do any true examination other than talk to her, I think.
Yeah. So
that always blew me away.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that I want to do is, I did get in the bill, but it's not mandatory. My next, my next advocacy is to get it mandatory in the bill. I want accessible medical equipment. They made the standards. They put a committee together. There was an OT on it from Philadelphia, and they have the standards. And now the next thing is to make it mandatory. And I'm going to try and do that, but I have to wait a little bit and see if I can put a coalition together to get that done. But it's the difference between life and death, literally.
Sure.
And, why shouldn't we advocate for things like that as OTs? We don't just advocate for something that increases someone's range of motion. We have to advocate for that, something that saves their lives.
Well, and part of that advocacy, we're kind of bringing it back to conference, is students doing research. And part of that research may come out as an advocacy motion that you're doing a poster presentation or a 1 hour session or something. So conference can be kind of the first step of bringing some research to light that would lead to an advocacy motion of changing law or how we practice or whatever. So keep those research hats on too.
Yeah, we had a poster this year that was advocacy for autistic adults. And it was community-based participatory research. So we had some autistic researchers in on it. But it's tough. We've got to think about advocacy very broadly.
Yeah.
So I guess one thing that I had been wanting to get more information on as an OTA faculty member, which ties right into your point of how AOTA and OTPAC goes right to reimbursement, but it is the issue of OTA reimbursement being decreased, that 15% reduction. I've been doing site visits and I've been talking to different OTAs and OTs. And Lisa, I'm curious about you and what your position is with your private practice. Where to me, it was just like, I printed off an article is on AOTA, kind of talking about the history of it, where it shows how AOTA has advocated for OTAs. And I think originally, this kind of came in, again, you guys jump in if you know more than me, because I'm still trying to learn, but it was modeled off of the physician assistant as well as nurse practitioners being a reduced reimbursement than a medical doctor. And so then I think it initially was like, if the OTA had, any little bit of involvement, then that whole billing code would get sent off at this reduced rate. And then they advocated and it got changed where now what the OT does, that gets reimbursed at full rate. And then what the OTA does. And then I think they made it where the minutes worked, where it's not just, I don't know, like the units get separated out depending on the 8-minute rule and whatnot.
Yeah. I thought that was a pay for, because CODAs weren't, or OT, I'm trying to remember, OT or CODAs weren't covered for something. And they extended that, and the pay for was to cut back on CODA reimbursement. And I'm trying to remember what that was, if it was military, if it was.
Well, no, there used to be with TRICARE, there used to be, but that got fixed.
Okay, so it wasn't, CODAs weren't covered under TRICARE?
Right.
Okay, so that's the fix, and the fix is to decrease the pay for is the decrease in the CODAs.
But there was another spot too, just like from what I understand, there was like a whole big, it was basically just shifting money around, like somebody else needed an increase. And so
right.
That's what
that's what I'm talking about. Yeah. So they needed to cover for TRICARE, and they took it away from the other. That's how that's a pay for. I'm sorry. Forgive me for using
you're
terminology.
And so the layman's, what Lisa, I think what you're talking about that I remember hearing or reading is that to be able to bill more for evaluation, they would decrease the amount of reimbursement for the CODA.
Right. I'm just saying that it was more broad than just OT. Like
yeah.
So it impacts more than just PT and OT, but it's a big one. So as far as like a business owner, Brittany, I employ OTAs, and my OTAs all treat as OT practitioners. And so right now, the way that I'm set up, I contract with another group. And so right now they're taking the hit. We do, I don't even know what the percentages are, but a high percentage of Medicaid. We're not seeing a lot of Medicare in my clinic yet. And so it's just been, I'm not sure how much of a hit that we're taking on all of that stuff. It's not been enough that the people I'm contracting with have chosen to pass it down to us, and I'm not saying anything so that they do. But it's definitely a concern, because if it continues, I mean, some stuff gets shifted all the time, right? So if they're taking a loss, they're going to share the loss down the line with me. So, which makes me think, well, gosh, do I really want to employ OTAs versus an OT? And, so far everything's good. And I still think that the model we use with having OTAs practicing alongside OTs is great and beneficial. So we'll keep doing that for as long as we can.
Well, that's from our perspective. Joanne and I have talked about this often, because it's just like, well, what is the future for OTAs? Which I think anyone, there are no OTAs here, but if someone's listening, as we post this for the public, there isn't reason to go out and panic yet, but I do feel like there is reason to watch it and reason to, really get maybe a little bit more fired up about advocacy, because this could be detrimental. Because Joanne and I have talked plenty on, the way that we approach the OTA program is we are making these clinicians, valuable extensions of the OT practitioner to have the same ability, I guess, to come up with valued interventions, evidence-based practice, where then when you look at that, it's theoretically the intervention should be the same, quote, the same, whether the OT is providing it or the OTA is providing it. But to have an OTA get reimbursed less, to me, just seems like a huge disservice to the OTA professionals out there.
Right. I remember as a consumer going to the doctor's office and getting my bill and being charged the same for a PA visit versus a doctor visit, right? And as a consumer, and this is like, I don't know, 20 years ago or something. And I remember thinking, well, gosh, is that fair? I'm getting less of a doctor, right? And I think a lot of times people, that's kind of what people are saying, right? They're getting a different, less of an OT practitioner maybe, but we have to just shift that thinking, because the OT assistant is not assisting the OT. They're not a tech. They're assisting the OT process. And like you said, everything they do, the treatments, and that's why it's been reimbursed the way it has in the past, because it's an OT treatment's an OT treatment. So whether it's done by an OTA or an OTR, I mean, so.
And then I feel like this article that I found on AOTA talked about too, like, we're a rural state, Idaho, where, a lot of times the main, like, I guess, professional that is at the facility more is an OTA, because, we don't have as many OTs, or like just the business model or whatever, where that we could see some serious impact throughout our state. But then obviously just,
Absolutely.
business owners thinking like, how does this impact reimbursement? I talked to an OT assistant and the OT at a skilled nursing facility here in Pocatello, and they had talked about kind of the same thing, where they'd been working with their resource manager, and at this point, they weren't making any shifts of, well, we'll take the OT assistant off of this, where I think it was kind of evening out. And that's so, because this would impact the Med A patients and the Med B patients, right? Just not Medicaid. That would stay the same reimbursement.
And Medicaid is, state by state. So, but they tend to follow Medicare.
Right.
And I don't know if the Part A is being affected as much. I am not sure, but I was talking to a friend of mine in home health yesterday and asked him, I said, because he was encouraging me to use an OTA in home health setting. And I asked him, just out of curiosity, and he didn't seem to think that they were, getting a hit there. So I'm not sure how that's, and where skilled nursing is being paid with that, that PDPM, that's a different.
PDPM, right? Payment
Yeah.
driven.
And
So patient
PGPM
driven.
is,
There you go, patient driven.
Patient-driven payment model.
So,
home health is PGPM.
Yes.
okay, yeah. So because they're kind of reimbursed a different way, where Med B, we're still reimbursed fee for service. So as much as I know, anyway.
Yeah, it was just a reminder to me of like, okay, I
Mhm.
need to stay on top of this so that we can
Right.
pass that down to our students to advocate for their profession, but then also to just
Yeah.
increase awareness of if we all ignore it, you know,
Mhm.
who knows if it's kind of continually passing the buck of, I think they know, or I don't know if they're
Right.
monitoring, like, where is this hit actually affecting businesses?
And will it be another 40 years before we fix this? Right?
Exactly. Yeah. Or is it going to be like people figure it out kind of late and then panic and then make drastic changes that our profession could have maybe done a better job or should have done, or, you know, in the process of doing a better job of mitigating this problem before people like kind of figure it out and then make drastic measures. Like
Mhm.
if it's, you know, like, oh my gosh, I didn't realize I lost all of this money because I
Right.
wasn't on top of it as much.
And then tying it back to conference,
Mhm.
there was a session on, there usually are legislative sessions and there's sessions for business owners, some years more than others, and on payments. So Medicare, Medicaid payment, well, not Medicaid because it's state by state, but Medicare payments that you as clinicians, business owners can go to conference and get some information from the source, that AOTA. What, you know, people have to, as you guys know, when you put your posters in, but do a thing to get in to be the presenters on that. But sometimes it's AOTA driven of who's presenting that information.
I'm sorry, I have to go. I have another meeting.
Okay, well,
Sorry.
we're happy that you came.
Yeah,
All right,
thanks for
me
Nice
joining.
to meet you.
Thank you.
So one thing to just note with the advocacy, it sounds so, I mean, you get somebody like Dr. Kornblau, who's, you know, gosh, we know she's got her Juris Doctorate. We know that she's, you know, I mean, she's definitely in that arena, right?
Mhm.
And I think it's easy as a new practitioner or, you know, new graduates even to think, well, what do I know? What can I do? And I felt that way for a really long time too. And I'm learning more and more. You know, you start looking just in your AJOT or in your OT practice that comes every month, there's always a section in the front that talks about advocacy and what's going on. And that's a good way to get, and on the AOTA page is really good. But we can do, even if we each wrote a letter to congressmen, to our representatives and said, hey, we need to look at this. We need to fix it and get it on their radar. It makes a difference. So
Yeah, I agree.
yeah. And so as a state, that's what we're going to be doing now that I'm back from conference and met up with AOTA people. You know, we'll be doing some more of those types of things that call for that call to action.
Yeah. Joanne, that would be a cool like addition maybe to the professional transitions course to like actually have the students and
Yeah.
you guys, you MOT students can bring that to your faculty or
I think,
your MOTSA club or something.
well, don't
Please
you
give
guys
us another
do,
assignment.
Yeah, exactly.
do you guys do a advocacy project that you're actually doing something out there, formal advocacy in the MOT program?
Haven't done any like formal advocacy. We had an assignment like practicing, like going and looking on AOTA, like these are the things that they're currently advocating for. Choose one, like write a call to, like a fake call to action for your colleagues type of thing. But I think it would be cool to actually like do it.
Do it. Yeah.
So
That could be such an awesome joint MOT
Yeah.
OTA program
Mhm.
endeavor as well. That'd be
Yes.
super cool.
I agree.
We'll put that
Okay.
on.
More assignments.
Yes. But yeah, I guess maybe tying this, I don't know where I'm going, but conference came, well, I don't know, Joanne, do you want to talk about the mental health stuff? Because I just feel like there was so much talk at conference about non-traditional field works or, you know, emerging practice areas, but they even went to say like mental health is no longer an emerging practice area.
Right. Which
But it's
is
like
crazy because that's the founding practice
Mhm.
it's
area.
the founding practice, but it's also like, how is it not still emerging because we don't have a presence in mental health yet? You know, where
Yeah.
again, I think it's a little baffling to me that like, And I think I'm still a little fiery about it because our students just did their level 1 fieldwork in the OTA program, and just, they went to awesome sites and got great exposure to mental health services. And then they came back and they said, wow, we could make a huge difference. Or, the what is it? The CBRS worker, or whatever the acronym is, the
Community-based
caregivers.
rehabilitation specialist.
Yeah. I mean, so those people, it's like their entry level training where it's like, how much more would it cost to hire an OTA, or obviously put in a little bit more money and hire an OT and an OTA to really actually offer OT services to a lot of these existing mental health services organizations that are looking at community reentry, looking at, independent living skills
Right.
without OT services. It is
Right.
just a crime to me to,
It
it was
is.
almost frustrating to be at conference where it's like so much, hurrah about this, but then where is it actually coming out into practice?
And it's still a lot of talk, I think, unless you're on the East Coast or in Chicago or, Texas, where there's a huge population and OTs doing it, because there were a couple that some of the sessions I went to, there were OTs working in practice, but it was those big population centers that had OT. And I think, Brittany, the emerging practice is the things like the jail systems and,
Sure,
the homeless populations, and that OT in the psych hospitals is, I don't think that's what they're necessarily referring to.
No, I know, but in my opinion, I think that's still emerging because we're
Right.
not consistent
In ours,
in those
right.
sites, right? At least
Yeah.
in our region.
Yeah,
But I would almost extend that to our state.
right. No, absolutely. And so it's true that the sessions I went to, the practitioners were doing a lot of talking about, like one of them I went to was, shoot. I just drew a blank on the name. Psychosis as a lived experience, psychosis as a human experience, where we think of schizophrenia or anybody that has hallucinations, delusions, that they are psychotic and they need to be medicated and they need to be hospitalized until we get a handle on those and they can go back out into society and live without experiencing that stuff. And the thought that these OT practitioners were talking about is why do we need to fix that? Why not help these folks live in spite of the voices they hear in their head and the things that they think, and help them just have a lived experience in spite of that, as OT practitioners working with them in that type of situation. And there's different models out there that have been tried, and successful community, small residential areas where people are not on medications and they live with their psychosis and are successful. But I did some research on that today, and there's, from what I could gather, it's successful if it's early psychosis, like your first experience of it, and you can go there and not be medicated and kind of experience it and kind of figure out what's going on and what is it really, what are the, it's a break in reality. It's the stress of their life that's causing some of this stuff sometimes. And if they can just go and experience it, maybe they can kind of put it in a way that they can go out into life and live with it alongside us. So there's just some interesting trends that are happening with mental health. And the other big one was, this one was mental health with oncology or cancer treatments. Why do we have to bill it as strictly as mental health or psych? Why are we not saying that the anxiety or the depression is the barrier to occupational performance? And if we can work on overcoming, providing coping strategies and stress management techniques to help them deal with those factors, then their occupational performance will improve. And if we're talking about occupational performance, that's just straight on OT. It's not necessarily mental health OT. and to not be afraid to do that. So those are kind of the main themes that came out of the mental health sections that I went to.
So I just had another thought of just advocacy. I mean, I guess this is kind of like a brainstorming session maybe, but I mean, I have, a rehash of some things that came from conference, but then thinking about how does this apply to Idaho, and I'll wrap up soon because I want to respect everyone's time. But I do think, another thing, like I am an athlete, I do a lot of running, where I have seen so many PTs with dry needling certifications, where my OT brain has not turned off, in the sense of this is a modality that I think our profession could use if we had the right training. But obviously, if we had our practice act supporting it in the state, in whatever state you're going to practice in, which I know some states do, because I know there are OT practitioners that do dry needle. And I especially could see this, I'm sure, a whole slew of different populations, but obviously in like outpatient orthopedics or cumulative trauma, I can just see dry needling. Why are hand therapists that are OT practitioners, why would they not be able to dry needle? And PT,
Brittany,
and then what?
You just need a cat. You get dry needled with the cat.
Not quite. but I do feel like that's something that, like the PT profession in Idaho had to advocate for quite some
Big
time
time.
against
Big time.
the chiropractor. No,
Yep.
the acupuncturist.
Acupuncturist. Mhm.
But they got it
Mhm.
added to their state practice act, and now it is, legal to
Right.
dry needle. I think there's still billing issues with it. Depending on each clinic, there's different models of how they're doing it. But I feel like that's another thing that our state anyway, and our profession in general, I think that's a big area. Why are we not pushing for that? My final thought. So this kind of segues into now more of Idaho, of just, I guess, preaching to the choir, because I've seen a lot of the same faces here at Journal Club. So kudos to you guys for being here, and especially the students, where you guys are the next generation of practitioners, where maybe you are going to disperse and work in different regions or different states and whatnot. But I think we have such a cool opportunity, or I'm hopeful that this could be a cool opportunity. But I mean, Joanne and I were kind of powwowing earlier about like the vision of this journal club and how it could potentially be united with IOTA and united with the different regions of Idaho, and like a collaboration between practitioners throughout our state, kind of in a mission to make us all rise together, which could lead towards advocacy. But I think also just, building, obviously, evidence-based practice and collaboration and sharing different ideas or education that we've received. But I think it ties in really well with the advocacy of what could we do as a more involved, unified state. And so I guess that's maybe the final thing to ponder, and how can we, I guess that's my mission, is how to kind of keep building this. But I would love to see it where, it's obviously the university is more than happy to spearhead and facilitate, but join forces hopefully with IOTA and then the different districts, and see if we can kind of raise some
So
involvement.
when Abigail and Alexa are district chairs, one
That's
in
right.
North Idaho and the other one in Central Idaho, you can take your turn as the district chair for that month or that quarter and host a journal club that everybody can come. You can have, local people attending in person, but you can also Zoom it so that the rest of the state can attend, and then it goes to the next quarterly or monthly, which however it would be, and that district would host the journal club. And my thought with it is that could then potentially pull in more clinicians rather than the academics into IOTA and the districts to come for something. And if we can get CEUs for coming to journal club, then that would give the clinician a reason to actually be there, other than saying, hey, that's a great idea, and never show up.
Yeah.
Because that's happening a lot.
But then hopefully,
I do.
go ahead.
Sorry.
No, go
I was
ahead.
going to share what I thought was cool, that the journal club that we did last month with the guy who has the new concussion clinic in Utah.
Mhm.
Yeah. That one of the adjuncts at the hospital that comes and helps with our neuro lab. She's kind of integrated some of the stuff that he talked about, and it like was put in our case study, and we kind of talked about it in class as well. So I just thought it was cool how like she came to the journal club and then it was able to be integrated to like the rest of the students that didn't come to the journal club, but I was
Yeah.
able to like share some of what I learned. So I can see the vision, and I think it would be really cool.
Perfect.
Let's keep going. So
Yes.
Yeah.
We're in the growing pains. So thanks to my, elite 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of you guys that are consistently coming. So maybe on that note, encouragement to get more live attendance.
Yeah.
We are going to take a break for the summer, but we have our last one. I already have it scheduled and planned. It is going to be after finals week for our lovely students so they can get through finals week. So it is Monday, May 9th. And we're talking about pediatric urinary incontinence. We have some practitioners in OT and then an OTA practitioner from Primary Therapy Source, who the OTA is going through the certification course or whatever, continuing education course next in 2 weeks. And then her mentor, Ivan Hardcastle, he's been through that. So they have some great knowledge to share with us next month. So pass it on, and hopefully we'll see more of you guys there.
Thanks for coming, guys.
Yes.